Kristen. It's lovely to have you here today.
Thanks so much for thinking of me.
So, you and I became friends because we share a very hard diagnosis of not only endometriosis, but also infertility. And you reached out as a friend to offer your advice while I was going through what was one of the most difficult challenges in my personal journey. So, thank you for that. And thank you for now being here to share with the viewers your story and how you were able to handle things step by step.
Yeah, I never knew. I just got chills thinking about that. I'm so glad I was able to help you because I really believe that women, we need to talk about this more. And it's such a hard topic, right? Because we're talking about periods and bleeding and infertility, and it's such a taboo subject. But back in the day when I was going through this was 18 years ago, before cell phones, before social media, I was writing to Oprah begging her, please do a show on endometriosis. It's a silent disease that so many of us suffer through, and there's nobody helping us. There's no treatment other than going under the knife at that point to get diagnosed. But I always had horrific periods from my very first cycle, 14-day long, like just horrific pain. My mom had endometriosis. My grandmother on both sides of my family and both my parents' moms had endometriosis. So we knew pretty early that I had it. But it wasn't until I was married and we had tried to conceive for a year, because they make you try to conceive for a year, even though I knew something was wrong before they did the first laparoscopy. And the very first laparoscopy revealed endo stage 4 on my appendix, my colon, my bowels. It was everywhere. The quick laparoscopy ended up taking 3 hours to get as much as she could. And we knew that that was the issue with me getting pregnant. But for me, what was so interesting, Diana, and everybody's journey with endo is so different, is that at 27, at 26, I'm 45 now, but I had the egg reserve of a 50-year-old woman. The endometriosis is essentially an autoimmune disease, and it was attacking my ovaries, and it was putting me in menopause. At 26 years old, there's these FSH levels that you get when you're going through IVF. And I know you know that, but not everyone watching might know. It's called your follicle stimulating hormone. And, 10 or under is optimal for pregnancy. They'll do IVF if it's 15 or under. Mine was 120 at 26. So it was debilitating. And I don't know how deep you want to go, but I had several surgeries, ovarian torsion. I lost an ovary before we could even get to the IVF stage. But it plagued my life from 13 until I had my first baby at 35.
And at 13 years old, you knew that your family had a history of endometriosis. So you were aware of what the disease was.
Yes.
So when did you have a doctor who said there's a likelihood of you having it? Because as we're learning, early intervention is what can help from having things like infertility, from having things like endo being everywhere, as you explained it.
Well, I would actually love to learn about that early intervention, because I now have a 12-year-old who started her cycles that are similar to mine, and I would love to know how to help her. So that's great. I'm going to go on this website and learn more. But to answer your question, I didn't go to a doctor until I was 16 or 17, and I was like, this is debilitating. I'm soaking Super Plus, tampon, and pad in 30 minutes, like both at the same time. Like, this is not normal. I had become anemic. And they put me on birth control because, back then in the 90s, that was the only treatment. You take birth control. Now, we don't know if birth control causes infertility, but there's some research to suggest it. But that was it. And it was my, OBGYN who said, I think that this could be endo that's causing your infertility. But at that point, I was 27. So it was 14 years later before I got someone to diagnose it.
And when you did get the diagnosis, was it a weight lifted off of you, or was there some sort of anger of why didn't anyone help me prior?
I don't think it was anger about not having people help me. I think I was more resentful just of medicine and that there was no treatment for it. I mean, keep in mind, this is before there was like Blackberries and cell phones, and we had the internet, but it was back to old school blogs and chat rooms. And I don't even know, I'm probably so much older than you. You might even remember that. But there wasn't a lot of information. I was buying like bootleg books off the internet called the Endometriosis Diet, like trying to self-treat it, because there was no treatment. There were no medications. Nobody was taking it seriously. It was like, you just live with it, take the pill, do IVF, and then have a hysterectomy. Like, that was it. So I think I was more angry at there being a lack of treatment options and a lack of people talking about it. And that's why I'm so grateful that for the work you and all of you are doing to bring awareness to this, because we need to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you run into any misdiagnosis along your way?
Well, we found out that I had adenomyosis, so it was much more serious. But and it was embedded in all my muscles.
Oh.
And I actually, when I finally went in for the hysterectomy, which was horrific because I was sobbing because I felt like I was taking out parts of my body. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to heal myself, but my appendix almost burst on the table from the endo. So I feel like people didn't take it seriously, and I don't want to, bash all men, but I found that a lot of the male doctors I work with didn't understand it, and that for me, female doctors were more helpful and more understanding because they might have felt it and understood it. But yeah, we didn't know it was adenomyosis. We didn't know how severe it was, and we didn't know that my appendix was so severe from the endo.
And with adenomyosis, that cure is a hysterectomy, and the last resort for that treatment option is a hysterectomy. And then obviously between having your first lap and then having your hysterectomy, which obviously is incredibly emotional and physically challenging in itself from the surgery and the healing process, you endured IVF, in vitro fertilization. What was that process like?
IVF set me on a spiritual journey because I was terrified of needles. I was the girl that went to the lab every month on day 3. And you have to keep in mind, so the audience may not know this, I'm a television reporter for the Miami Heat. My husband's a television director. That's where we met. He traveled with the team. So we had a short window to try to conceive in the off season, right? If they didn't make the playoffs, we were like, yes, we can try from April to October. But if they went to the finals, which the Heat did for 3 years, in a row, we had a very short window to try. So we tried off and on for, 6 to 8 years to get pregnant.
Wow.
But I was terrified of needles. So I just did IUIs. I did the endo diet. I did acupuncture. I went to healing gurus and did, spiritual healings. I went to meditation retreats. So, and I sought therapy because I really think that for me, I had to release a lot of my anger and resentment and accept this diagnosis and accept, okay, listen, if I want to get pregnant, this is what I have to do. And then I had to accept the outcome. Am I okay with this not happening? And that took a year for me to come to the realization that, okay, either I can get pregnant or I won't, but that doesn't mean my motherhood journey ends. I can still adopt. I could still foster because I'm still considering foster care. I would love to help other kids. And when I finally got to the point of acceptance, I think that's when I was able to move forward with IVF. But IVF is brutal. It, like anyone that's gone through IVF, I mean, it's shots, it's bruises, it's hematomas, it's pain, it's hot flashes because they put you on drugs to put you in menopause.
Yes.
It's awful.
Yeah, my bones ached. I didn't know that a bone could ache, but one of the side effects of one of my IVF drugs actually said like bone pain, which is far different than any kind of muscular pain. And with anything, there's side effects. I definitely, and a lot of the stimulation is not good for people with endo. Really?
No, it's hard. But for me, and if anyone's watching that is going through IVF, I'm going to tell you what really, this is my trick, and this is what helps me, and this is what I preach on my blog. The number one tool I had was gratitude. Like every single day, I would write down what I was grateful for. And this is back in the day when Oprah was interviewing Eckhart Tolle and the New Earth was really big. So that book was like my Bible through IVF, which is teaching you to stay present. But I would write what I was grateful for. I only made 4 eggs, 2 embryos, and only 1 survived with my first cycle. And with my second baby, I only made 1 egg. I was 35 years old and my body was full menopausal. I was so lucky to bring my FSH down to 13. I made 1 egg. We called it the golden egg. And let me tell you, every single day, I said, I am so grateful for this 1 egg. And I would do affirmations underneath my gratitude every day. And I would write, my baby is growing inside me. This egg is my baby. And I had to stay fully present. I wrote it, I manifested it. I know that sounds out there and woo-woo, but it works. It's the law of attraction. I stayed positive. I wrote down everything that was happening every night. I kept journals and journals, and got those emotions out and really staying positive and present and there was no social media back then, so there was no distraction, but just taking care of my body, eating healthy and staying focused on the goal. Like, I really believe that's what helped me, is just staying super positive. And it's so hard. And I know I'm lucky that it worked twice. But even if it didn't work, Diana, I was okay with the outcome, and I would have probably adopted. I wouldn't have, I would have been sad, but I would have continued. But I don't know if that helps anyone, but it really helped me
Well,
stay.
it does help, because you and I spoke before, I believe, before I even went through my embryo transfer. And one of the best, for me, some of the best advice I received, because I wasn't married, I wasn't even thinking about having a baby. I had this game plan that I was going to be 36 and married and have, like, the nuclear family, the white picket fence, the whole American dream that obviously has changed, and now everything is different, and that's awesome. But someone said to me, "Hey, listen, you need to try, because if you don't try, you'll always regret it. You'll always regret what if, because this is your window of opportunity to try to become a biological parent. And if it doesn't work, you always can say you tried that option, and then it wasn't meant for you. You were meant to either foster, adopt, do it a different way." And I always felt confident going through the process that if the outcome wasn't having my own biological child, it wasn't for lack of giving it a shot.
Absolutely. And that's why we did the second cycle. Having the first one was so hard. And then I had complications. She was in the NICU.
Mm.
They nicked my spinal column during
Oh,
the the epidural. Like, I had all these issues. But number two came up, and it was like, we got your FSH down. Do you want to try this? And my husband's like, you really want another one? And I was like, I will always regret not trying. This is like exactly like you said. This is our window of opportunity. We have an option to try again. Let's go for it. And we did. And we made one egg, one embryo, and she is the light of our lives. And I
yeah.
really believe that I was meant to go through that journey, and I was meant to talk about it and help other people, because we need to talk about it as women, and we need to help each other, and we need to support each other, and we need better treatment options.
Yeah. And the thing about endo is that, and I'm sure you've been asked this, how has it changed your life? And when we can talk about the physical outcomes and the effects, and how it can be debilitating, but there's also positives that come out of going through an illness like this. There's almost an enlightenment and a self-awareness, I think, that someone who goes through this path has, that someone else who hasn't suffered from a chronic illness gets in their life.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just nailed it. You become self-aware. You have to dig deep, and you have to dig through those layers that we all have. And let's be honest, it's not just physically debilitating. There's anxiety that comes along with it, and depression, because your hormones are all out of whack, and you're sad and you're scared. But in every experience we go through, we have to find what the lesson is. And the lesson for me was to learn to be present, be grateful, be authentically myself, not be afraid to talk about these topics. And it really helped me. I feel like I grew up. Like, I was already a grown up. I was a married woman, but I was kind of like just coasting through life, not paying attention. But then when you get this diagnosis and you go through what we went through with endo and so many surgeries, like multiple 7 surgeries for me in IVF, you grow up and you become who you were meant to be, and you get to know yourself better. And you get to understand the depth of your strength, because everybody always says women are strong, but you don't know how strong you are and how resilient you are until you live through this and you go through IVF and you're able to conceive. I mean, it's just, it's a miracle, and it was a gift. And, everybody asks me, what's your dream? What do you want in life? Because I don't work full time, and I had my kids. Like, that's a dream for me. Being a mother is a gift.
Mhm.
And I made it. Like, I would be happy tomorrow if my life ended, because I got to live and make these beautiful humans, and go through this, and get to see myself through their eyes. Kids are our mirrors,
Yeah.
and they make me want to be a better person for them. And it really was a gift.
Mhm. And I feel for those too that can't conceive naturally, that there's also just a knowing, a knowing of their strength, a knowing of their fortitude, and knowing that they can push through and overcome anything and everything, because these are personal challenges. that they're living with on a daily basis. I mean, when you get a diagnosis with endo, because we haven't advanced, unfortunately, medically, scientifically enough yet, where we do have very few treatment options, there's no cure in sight. The best thing that they call the gold standard is excision surgery and hormonal treatments and all of this that may or may not work for some people. It is really figuring out mentally and emotionally how you cope, because you can't run away. It's not a problem that you can run away from. It's not a coworker that you don't get along with or a boss that's annoying. This is your body, and it's almost like you can feel trapped in it. So you have to live within this body that has this diagnosis that has no real end in sight. And that's incredibly mentally challenging and fatiguing.
It is. And it goes back to acceptance. But I think another lesson that I've learned is how powerful we are.
Mhm.
And we don't have to rely just on doctors or hormonal treatments. There's so many other options out there that can really help you. Acupuncture for me was really, really helpful in bringing in herbs, Chinese medicine, in bringing my FSH down. My IVF doctor couldn't believe that I went from 120 to 13
Oh, wow.
within 2 months, and was able to do a cycle and make 4 eggs, 2 embryos. And that was from dietary, herbal medicine, and acupuncture. Now, I will say I paid all of that out of pocket. And I'm extremely fortunate that we could afford that, and because insurance doesn't cover this. So I feel very privileged saying that. And I don't want to, make anyone uncomfortable if they can't afford it. But a lot of these places, like my acupuncturist would work with me, and she would give me discounted rates, and she would give me like a layaway plan where I could pay later. Those things and the dietary changes, I feel like really, really helped. And I'll say this now, I'm in menopause post hysterectomy. I mean, I was in menopause before I had my second baby, but I've been in menopause 10 years. And that's we could do another hour talk on that.
And we should.
I want to tell you that when I endo diet, there's all these, and again, this isn't scientifically FDA approved. This is just, natural research, but dairy-free, sugar-free, wheat-free. When I eat that clean diet, I take the caffeine out of my diet, my hot flashes go away. Like I can take my estrogen patch off. It's so amazing how much power we as women have to heal ourselves, but we have to have the time, and the means to do it. Yeah. But it's exhausting, and it takes up my time to meal plan all day Sunday and cook and prep food. But I feel so much better when I eat clean and take the caffeine out. I mean, my hormones level out, my anxiety goes away. It's amazing. Oh, I know.
I know. That is my in life. Like people are like, "What's your, addiction?" And I don't drink. I've never smoked. I don't do recreational drugs. It's like this coffee is my drug, and it's
for me, it's baking. It's sugar. I love baking with my girls. We're obsessed with Christina Tosi and Milk Bar, and we do her bake club. And I can't eat it, but like sugar is my vice. I don't drink. I don't smoke, but for me, it's sugar.
Yeah. And I do notice that there are foods and there are things, especially like dairy, can't eat it. Ice cream, love it, can't have it. There's just certain things I know my body has an inflammatory reaction to. So those are all really good tips. And I feel like we've covered a lot of ground today. And what I would love to have you come back and discuss is menopause, because that is everyone goes through menopause, but I think going through menopause with endo is particularly difficult.
It's really challenging. It's really challenging to start in your 30s, because I nursed my second baby for 2 years to stave off menopause. I was like, take the boob, please. I don't want to get my periods back and go through this. But 37, she was done with me, and it just came roaring back. And it is the hardest, most challenging thing in your 30s to deal with.
I started going through menopause like 2 years ago, and I just turned 38 in February. I had to think about that. And it was like drenched, hot flashes, the whole thing. I'm like, what is going on? And this was right after I had my son. And so it happened.
That's a whole other topic.
It's a whole other thing for another day.
Mental health and emotional health. It's such a difficult thing.
Yeah. And it's just really It's just a yucky feeling.
I
Uh,
know, I feel so bad for my daughters. They're always like, "Why don't men have to deal with this? Why do we?" And I'm like, "Because we're strong and we create the men. Our bodies give
that's
birth to
right.
those men." So
We create the men. Thank you so much. I look forward to our next discussion on menopause that I've just assigned us.
thanks for having me.
See you soon.